Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Elizabeth A. Corshu, and I am the host of Mic'd Up and Unapologetic. It is a platform that has been established where power, purpose, and presence meets the mic. It's a bold and innovative podcast platform created to ensure truth to power is spoken in every episode, every conversation, and every mic drop. Today, we are kicking off Women's Heart Health Month. And it is great, distinct pleasure to have my former roomie, now heart sister forever for life, Hyvel Ferguson Davis. I had the distinct pleasure of meeting Hyvel 2 years ago on February 1st when
Yes.
I walked into the room. We're Women Heart Sisters. She'll talk a little bit more about her foundation that she established as an inspiration to her heart journey as well. But most important, I wanted to share the topic of tonight is a very important and true topic to heart. The title is called Two Heart Stories, One Heart Truth. Yes, you heard that correctly. I'm going to repeat it. Two heart stories, one heart truth. Both Hyvel and myself are heart, I don't say the word survivors anymore. I say thrivers. We are heart thrivers. So, with further ado, I'm just going to pass the virtual mic over to Hyvel Davis. She is the founder of Heart Sisters Incorporated, as well as she's a newly minted TEDx speaker, author. She does it all, but I'm going to let her uh, tell her truth and her explain a little bit more about. I don't want to miss anything because this woman does it all. She's Heart Sister International. Some days she could be in Germany, other days she could be in Spain. So I'm going to let her. I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to Hyvel.
I want to thank you for even, setting up everything tonight and what you do. It's so important, and your theme tonight really hits home for both of us. And the reality is, for a lot of women that look like us, there's some issues. So I thank you for just bringing this conversation on. Thank you for the alignment, because definitely you are my heart sister and my woman heart sister. So it's so important that we make these conversations very conversational, but we need to make it a routine, because we need to go beyond the layers of exactly what happens so that we can bring it out to the forefront. So now we can talk about it, mitigate loss of life, but make it something that we all can be at the table talking about, because all of our hearts matter. And the clear fact of, in my frustration, in my desperation, I knew I could not do this alone. And I started to be a voice, because everything around me was not conducive to my health. And I understood if I wanted to change and to change my environment. And that's how I started. That's how Hearts was birthed. It was her birth out of desperation, wanting to live, but did not have the tools to adapt. So we can
Mm.
talk about a lot. So go ahead.
Okay, so I first thing I'm going to ask you
Mhm.
to we're going to kind of tag team. I'm going to ask you to kind of share your heart story
Uh-huh.
because I think your heart story is more recent than mine,
Uh-huh.
but both of them is equally important. But I'm going to ask you if you can kind of share with the audience tonight and those that will catch the replay.
Uh-huh.
When did you know that you were having a heart event, or were you even aware that you were having a heart event? I know you had two events that happened. If you can kind of give us a detailed description as to what that looked like, and how did you how did you move in that moment?
Yes. Okay. So it was 12 years ago and 2 days because I just celebrated my 12th stroke anniversary because this
Mm,
started all from a stroke. I
okay.
did not know the warning signs, nor was I privy to what I was going to be facing. I was
Mm-hmm.
41 years old and I was having a major headache at work, and I decided to go home. And when I went home, I tell the story about how my daughter woke me up, and I started to multitask in the kitchen. And
Hmm.
she said she couldn't understand a word I was saying. She said I was talking gibberish. It didn't make sense to her. So she called my sister, who in then turned told her to call the emergency. So they
Mm-hmm.
called the EMS, and my blood pressure thing was 192 over 100 and something. And you know what
Hmm.
I did? I refused to go to the hospital.
You
I refused to
refused?
go to the hospital.
May I ask what made you refuse? What was going on that made you? Were you scared?
No, I was too busy. I was a
Hmm.
person, I had a schedule. I actually crammed for a test because I was in school, get my bachelor's degree at this point. And I'm like, okay, this is not going to fit into my schedule. I need to, I'm actually having a stroke sitting down cooking dinner.
Oh,
I actually finished dinner
oh my.
and I went to bed. It was not until my husband came home that when I popped out of bed, because now I have to go to class, and my daughter took my son to soccer practice. And I woke up and I couldn't feel my leg. It started to go limp. So my
Oh
husband was like,
my.
"We're going to the hospital." I'm like, "Nope." And we fought tooth and nail because I did not want to go to the hospital. But once I reached there, the triage nurse said possible stroke, and my life changed.
Mm.
And
So
I didn't.
when you heard, if I may interject, when you
Mhm.
heard those words, possible stroke, what was the first thing that came to mind?
I was afraid.
Mm.
I was afraid. I was 41 years old. I'm in school. I'm a mother. I'm a soccer mom, and my daughter's about to graduate. And I have these scheduled check off of stuff that I needed to do. And here I am in the hospital, and my world got extremely quiet and silent.
Mm.
And in the hospital, it was just, you know, suffering a stroke. It's like, and I tell people, it's not a physical debt in a sense, but a mental thing because everything is robbed. I talk about the veil. I wanted to scream, I
Mm.
couldn't. I wanted to connect my body parts, and it wasn't working. So all I did was
Mm.
actually just looked up at the light because I could not
Mm.
control. And I was always a person that was in control of everything I did. And now I just had to sit in silence. And that was really deafening for me to do. And the fact of, I had a stroke and I went in the hospital, and they wanted to release me actually in a few hours. It was not until my sister came and she's like, no,
Mm.
something's going on. You're going to have to check her again. So they
Mm.
did another test and they found that I had a stroke.
Wow. Thank God you had a sister to advocate on your behalf.
I think
Imagine,
about the women who don't have it. I really
imagine
think
those that don't.
hmm
So I think this is a perfect segue for me to kind of go into my story. So my story is a little bit different in regards to I always say I'm very thankful and I'm blessed to be a registered nurse. I am thankful and I'm blessed that I've had the intensive care unit training, very high intensive training to be a nurse in the trauma intensive care unit and the cardiac coronary unit, where I've taken care of all types of open heart patients and those that were that suffered heart failure.
hmm
So here I was in my third trimester, knowing all the signs and symptoms of what heart failure looks like. And I advocated for myself, even though I was 30. This was my first time pregnancy. but I opened my mouth because that's one thing anyone who really knows me, even family, friends, will say. One thing about Elizabeth, she doesn't say much, but when it's time to say it, she makes it count.
Mm.
And I said to the doctor, "Hey, doc, I noticed that my legs are swelling. They look like elephantitis. You know the elephant feet? You know how
Yes. Uh-huh.
tight
Yeah.
and big and swollen?
Mm-hmm.
It was getting to the point where I typically would wear a size 9.5 shoe. I was wearing a size 13 men's flip flops because I couldn't fit anything. And walking and trying to breathe was very difficult. But when I kept sharing with the doctor that I believe I'm in heart failure, her immediate, the OBGYN perinatologist, the immediate response to me, because I I am a registered nurse and my children's father is a physician assistant. And immediately she said, "I am playing doctor." I said, "Doc, the last trimester, I was the last 4 weeks in August, the first week in August, so I was going to see her twice a week. So, for example, typical, um, you should not be gaining more than 3 pounds in a day.
Mm.
So on Monday, for example, I was 190 pounds. By Friday, I was to see her, I was 200. By Monday of the next week, I was 210. By Friday, I was 220. Still telling this woman I'm in heart failure. She said my labs were normal, my blood pressure was normal, and she said I was anxious and I'm playing doctor. Finally, the last week before I was about to give pregnancy, it was like the third week, I went up as high as 250 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And I gave birth naturally, successfully, during the blackout of August 14th, 2003. And then that's when everything started. My blood pressure shot up. I was discharged 2 days after giving birth. And I felt like I was running a marathon and I was only walking maybe less than 5 feet. And my muscles in my neck were, when a marathon is runner is running,
Mm.
and the neck muscles, when they're tired, it's like that's what my muscles were doing in my neck.
Mm.
And I thank God to this day that their father was obedient because he came home from a very difficult shift. And I was intuitive enough to know. I said, "I need you to take me to the hospital right now because if you don't, I will not be here." And I will say on this live that this is not to scare anyone, but it's to God be the glory that I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
The ejection fraction, because you've had an echo, we'll talk about more about.
Mm-hmm.
My ejection fraction was 5%, not
Oh,
compatible.
nice.
Mhm. So, to God be the glory, no device, no transplant, everything in 6 months uh, bounced back into normalization. So we're going I'm going to lean in to ask you in regards to when you finally got into the hospital setting. May I ask, you said you were afraid. Was it you were afraid of the loss of control, or were you afraid entering into the healthcare system as a Black woman?
It was mostly loss of control. I didn't understand the complexity of the healthcare system that came to me later. And, what I was worried about in the time that I had the stroke, it was like just surviving. The basic things that we take for granted, brushing our hair, combing our head, even thought patterns or thinking. everything was on a delayed response. I could not do anything for myself. I was put in rehab at
Mm,
41, PT, physical therapy, cognitive skills, speech therapy. So it was just surviving and trying to make it home. I think around that time, my sense of who I
mm,
I was like in a bubble in a sense, and I had to deal with a lot of emotions. Talk about physical emotions, but it was not really a skepticism of the healthcare because I needed it. And so I
right.
just wanted to survive. I wanted to get better. I wanted to get home. And that what I prioritized myself in doing at rehab. At 41, who goes to rehab? You think about a rehab as, elderly people go to rehab. And here I was in a stroke ward in silence and quiet with my emotions. That was it. Trying to get back home.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. So I hear the part when you said you were in silence.
Hmm.
What did that look like for you? Were you having a conversation with God in regards to how did I get here? What did that look like for you spiritually wise? Because I'll share with you how what I felt like at that moment when I got the
Hmm.
diagnosis. But what was going on in your mind from a spiritual sense um, when you got that diagnosis and you were just sitting there in silence in the stroke
Uh-huh.
ward?
To tell you the truth, there was nothing going through my mind other than other shock. I was just stunned. And I really couldn't see past the diagnosis. I could not see past it. And
Hmm.
I was stuck there for a while. And people get stuck in that place. And
Yeah,
I couldn't, I could breathe, but I could not see. It was like it was a silent, I was drowning in my own thoughts, couldn't come out. Cognitively, I was not there. I tell people
yeah.
that after I
So
had the stroke,
were you aphasic? Were you not able to process and speak out what you were thinking or
no, I couldn't. And at one point, I tell people that I lost a lot of cognitive ability. I could not spell, I could not think, and I would say words and they would come out all weird. And to this day,
mm,
I still have some of those deficits, but I've learned how to mitigate those. But during that time, it was something new. Everything was new. And how do I get back to somewhat a sense of me? So I didn't really, I lean on God for everything. But in this
mm,
state, I was just wrapped up in this diagnosis that took on a life of its own, didn't understand, was afraid of where I'm going on, what's the prognosis, the diagnosis. I wasn't
mm.
getting the information needed. So I was just stuck.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, to God be the glory. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that God kept you and
Yeah.
you are a woman that's advocating and doing so well and doing so much. And I would have if you didn't tell me your story, I would not know that you had that many hurdles to come through in regards to rehabilitation. So
Yeah. The
I'm
stroke
going
was
to
just the beginning. Yes, it was.
it was just the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing, and I just want to say, you know, congratulations for stake. You are a rock star. So with that being said, I just put the rock star music on. You
No,
are a
we
rock star.
we all are in our own way. I tell people, it's like, you can go through life and life gives you life be life, and like they say, but it's so important how we control it, how we come out of it. Because what should have killed me just actually gave me fuel for the fire that was it within. That I felt like there was a need. I felt like the system failed to me. And
Mhm.
and I'm like, no. And so I started looking at the disparities around me, the conversations we're having, the healthcare system and everything, the silo. And I'm like, no, this is not working. And how do we fix the gap? As a patient, understanding that, hey, this shouldn't have happened. It should have been caught. I actually got a diagnosis 12, actually 11 years into my journey. And I think
Mm,
about the stroke. Then I had the
mm,
heart attack. I had a
mhm.
quadruple bypass. I had a
Mm.
second heart attack. And I have 10 stents inside of me. And tell you the truth, I went for an EKG and I'm going to probably have to have another stent put in next month. So the
Mm-hmm.
journey is there. How do we get somewhat sense of control and mitigating factors? It's so important. The system is failing us. And, instead of
So,
complaining, instead of
mhm.
murmuring about it, I decided to be an advocate for those who don't understand, to say not fight the system, but let everyone know that we're here, we're valid,
Correct.
and
Correct.
we need to be seen, we need to be heard, and just fill in the gaps. That's what's so important. So we empower women to go beyond, ask questions, and if you don't get the question, you don't get the answers, ask for other questions, see another doctor. That's where we are in the state of our crisis.
Yes. So I just want to lean in. You talked about systems failing, and I'm pretty sure there are some people that have they felt that the system has failed them. And let me lean into going back to my story and
Mhm,
being diagnosed with, it's called heart failure, but it's really called peripartum cardiomyopathy, which,
mhm,
for a person that's not in the medical field, they're like, ooh, what's that big, big diagnosis. But
mhm,
um, in a sense, like you just said, it gives us fuel. It gives us a new, renewed sense of purpose. But I will be honest with you. I was 30 years old
mhm,
at the top, tip top, healthiest condition ever, athlete, playing tennis, dance, you name it. And to get that diagnosis was really a shock to me. But I do remember being in that ICU bed.
mhm,
And when the doctor came into my room, and I got to give it to the doctors, to some of them. Some of them, when they have to drop bad news, they just say what they have to say real quick in less than 10 seconds and they're out the door. And I said, wait a minute, call him back. Call him back.
mhm,
Um, I didn't hear you clearly. Did I hear you clearly say that my ejection fraction was 5% not compatible to life? And he said, yes. And I said, so let me understand this, because I've worked in trauma ICU and cardiac. So if I wasn't active the way I am active, and exercising and pretty much eating the right foods, when I could, um, I said, so I could have been intubated, right? I mean, like, I needed that reality check.
mhm,
And he said, and he paused because he was so frightened. Like, I challenged him, and he said, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. You would have been someone of your ejection fraction and situation. Yeah, it's very grave,
mhm,
and you would have been intubated. Yes, you're correct. And what adds insult to injury, I remember being so bold enough to call. I should not be calling from my ICU bed, but I got on the cell phone and I called a nurse colleague of mine who worked in the emergency room.
mhm,
And I said, "Can you believe I have this diagnosis and I'm on this drip and da 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 da?" And she went silent. I said, "What happened?" She said, "Liz, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're a miracle. I just cared for a woman with that same diagnosis last night. She didn't make it."
mhm,
So after I hung up the phone with her, I went through. There's a theory by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the stages of dying.
mhm,
I felt like I was having a slow death. I was in bargaining, acceptance, all of that. And finally, I said to God, God, you get me out of this situation. I bounced back. That's my desire because I want to see these twins, well past 5 years old, 10 years old. Now they're 22 years old in college. I said, I am going to tell my story
Mm.
and nobody's going to silence. So I say all that to say I was very angry
Mm.
because I felt like, just like we're heart sisters, we look out for each other.
Yes.
My OBGYN, she knows I'm part of the healthcare system. I tell you my symptoms and you dismiss me.
Yeah.
And the only thing I kept thinking to myself was, what about the people that are not empowered with the information that I have?
Yeah.
So you are absolutely correct. We have to tell our stories. We have to empower. We have to come up with solutions, not murmur, not complain. So share today what is Heart Sisters doing to mitigate some of the lack of knowledge amongst, I know your target audience is broad, but I'm going to speak about the brown and the black community.
Yes.
What
Uh-huh.
does that look like for you with Heart Sisters?
Yes, it's so important. The community that we serve, like I said, out of desperation, I found hope, but moreover, I found a calling. And you go in our communities, we think about comorbidities, hypertension, high cholesterol or bad cholesterol, diabetes. And you go into our communities and just the basic information, like you talked about how you knew the system, you knew the lingo of the doctor. Here we
Mhm,
are in our communities where the women that we service don't know any of this.
mhm,
Basic information is not there. And this, beside the fact, there's social determinants. It's like my light bill needs to be paid. I have to go to work. Now, how do I think about myself and my health? And how do I prioritize what I need to prioritize? And so, looking at systemically of what we go through, what we deal with, we know the women that we service. And there is a lot, there's a plethora of drugs. There's
mhm,
emergent technology, science is working, but there's a gap because it's not in our community. So we decided fundamentally, because we know who she is.
mhm,
I'm her, you're her, and our
mhm,
sisters and our family members are the same thing. So, I started looking at what I've done because I knew silos treatment does not work. I needed community.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so I started my community and I started hanging with people that, exercise 5Ks, ate better because I did not have the tools. Fundamentally, when I was diagnosed with diabetes, it was take your insulin. That's all I knew about diabetes. So I never knew about, carbs, complex, simple carbohydrates. So I'm like, wait a second, I don't know this. And now I'm learning this. And I started showing up to meetings because I wanted to live. I was 41. I had a 5-year old and a 17-year-old. And so I'm learning everything possible to live. And I'm like, wait a second, there's a deficit. And I noticed that, I looked in the room and I was the only person of color in the room. And I'm like, there is
mhm,
something wrong here. There's a gap. Now I'm
mhm,
here searching for information so that I can live. And I think about my community just go home and die basically. Back and I'm like,
mhm,
oh, I would go to the corner stores, all the stuff that food desert, all the stuff that's not conducive to a healthy society. And I'm looking at this as I'm starting to now gain kind of momentum of understanding I'm still dealing with my mess. But I knew if I did not fundamentally change who I was, it was
mhm,
going to change. Because, I talk about generational curses and, it's behavior pattern. I had
mhm.
to completely change my thought pattern of how I
Correct.
interacted with me. Because it wasn't the fact of, oh, go to the gym. No, I had to do a lot of mental
Mental work. Mhm,
work within before I can actually see myself doing it because it wouldn't last. That's why I don't do diets. No, it's lifestyle choices. So
mhm,
going into who she is, knowing what baggage that she's carry, that Heart Sisters were gatekeepers. We go
So
far beyond the layers to understand who she is, to bring her from a place of knowing to more
I
empowerment.
I don't want to miss that statement that you said. There's a lot of baggage
Mm-hmm,
that you are carrying, and that is a piece, a layer that those that are within the healthcare system, the doctors or the nurses, if they're doing a initial assessment,
mm-hmm,
you did mention that they were going to discharge you, and then your sister said, absolutely not. Something is off, something is wrong. So, from just a consumer, a patient experience, outside looking in, what would you recommend to nurses or doctors um, to be more in tuned,
mm-hmm,
more in touch? Because I had a conversation with another colleague who's a nurse practitioner, woman heart, sorry, not woman heart, woman's midwife. She's within maternal health, but she had a pulmonary embolism experience 5 years ago when she gave birth.
mm-hmm.
And she doesn't use the word dismiss, but she said if she did not open her mouth to advocate, she may not have been here.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things that was very heavy in the discussion, she said to me, she said, Liz, I see patients all the time, and all the women of color, they want me to be their nurse practitioner. She said, I can't save everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was a very profound statement, deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what we as practitioners, we go through training and further continuing education courses, cultural diversity, all these things. So what do you think would be a recommendation for some of these doctors? Because what I'll tell you though, I tell people all the time, if you're not able to have a dialogue, conversational level of respect, or a deep dive without the person, I call it the God complex, the doctor
Mm-hmm,
having a God complex, you should be able to challenge each other on a respectful manner
mm-hmm.
and learn from each other. It
Yes.
should be a two-way street, not one way, not just. So what would you recommend? Because honestly, the numbers in 2003 was seven was 3.6. Now the numbers are double. It's 7.6
Mm-hmm.
for maternal health for my heart event. So what would you recommend in regards to, I mean, there's multifaceted layers, but from a interactive
Uh-huh.
patient interaction, what would
Yeah.
you recommend?
Well, patient-centered care is so important. I feel like nothing for us should be without us, which is so important. We developed at Heart Sisters, we developed a guide with every Black woman should know going into the ER. Because, we can be labeled hysterical or non-compliant because we ask question or we even question authority. But what I think needs to happen is there needs to be more dialogue. There needs to be more conversation. At Heart Sisters, we do lunch and learns with our hospital, our local hospital. We even go to the fire station department and we do CPR events because empathy plays a role in it also. You have to see a person as an individual. And if you
Correct.
don't see a person as an individual, that's a major stepping stone. So once we bring the patient and their providers together, I call my office or my doctors, they're my care team. I want them
Hmm.
invested in me so that
Hmm.
now they can help me get to where I need to go to, which is a proper management tool. But if a system is so fragmented where a doctor has so limited time, he's writing prior authorization, trying to get to his clients, trying to get this medication. So there's a lot that plays a role in it. But I believe
Hmm.
if a doctor starts by empathy and
Mhm.
making sure that you treat the person in front of them like a patient, but
Mhm.
more person. Patient-centered care is, I think, it's a must. So these dialogue, that's why I come on, that's why I talk, because we have to make this normal. Normalize conversations between both parties so that we can mitigate and look at the gaps and then fill them. But it starts with proper dialogue, not to say even questioning, but make sure that nobody falls and nobody dies needlessly. That's at the end of the day, we all want to go home. Doctors go,
Mhm.
or whoever care team goes into the profession because they want to save lives. This is not something you just stumble upon. So the need is there, the will is there, but how do we get everyone in the same space so that we can achieve the optimal goal? That's the issue. And that's what
Yes,
we're addressing at Heart Sisters.
yes, yes. Wonderful, wonderful. So I see we're coming to almost the end of our broadcast,
Yeah.
and I know that you have a lot to do. I do as well. But I do want to say thank you so much for taking this opportunity to kick off Women's Heart Health Month.
Yeah.
This is our anniversary date of us first meeting and walking into Capitol Hill and
I know.
advocating on heart health.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I was scheduled to be down in DC, but a prior engagement has come and I'm not able to attend. But I wish all my women heart sisters all well as they go and they advocate on
Yeah.
Capitol Hill for all the heart events that are existing across the board. But is there anything that you'd like to share with the audience that you might have coming up, especially those that like to get on a plane and travel? I think I saw something. Was there a fashion show or something
Yeah,
that's coming up?
yeah, there's a lot happening. And we partnered with Sawgrass Mall and Commissioner Guzman because she's also a two-time heart survivor. And
Mm,
you hear the stories all the time. It's not nothing out, it's like it's not out there, but
mm,
we all make that heart connection and we understand that the more we speak, because we
mhm.
could look fabulous on the outside and don't even
Mhm,
know what we're going through.
mm,
Heart attacks and strokes are 80% preventive. So when we normalize this stuff that we can actually talk about it. So that's why we're gonna have a fashion show and celebrate it. I'm so
yeah,
grateful for that. And other opportunities just to touch people. So if you want to hear more about the work we do, I want everyone to support, support, support. You can
yes,
log on to our website at www.heart, that's HEARTSISTASINC.org, or our social media, which is Heart Sisters. That's
yeah,
HEARTSISTAS. Elizabeth, I want to thank you for bringing me on tonight. It's so important. Like I said, these engagements, it's a preview into our world that people
yeah,
need to see so that we can
yeah,
normalize these conversations so that we can mitigate loss of life. That's why I
yeah,
speak. We want to be
yeah.
seen, we want to be heard,
Amen.
and we want to live.
Yes,
So
thank
thank
you so
you.
much. Thank you. I am so appreciative. This was something that came together, and I said I have to reach out and I have to kick out. Didn't even realize this was the date that we met two
I
years ago. So
know.
everything was aligned. So thank you, my dear sister. Safe travels. I wish you all the best. So, like I said, mic'd up and unapologetic is where power, purpose, and presence meets the mic. I thank you once again.
Oh,
Have a
thank
great
you.
night. Take
Thank
care.
you.
God.
Thank you. Wonderful show. Thank you. And congratulations on the show.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.